You're looking at one of Florida's best-kept geological secrets, hiding in plain sight between the St. Johns River and the Indian River Lagoon. This blue line is the Addison Canal, a failed 1911 project that tried to connect these two waterways just south of Titusville. But here's what the developers didn't know, and what most people still don't realize. They weren't digging a new connection. They were trying to reopen an ancient one, a river mouth that closed over 100,000 years ago, a pathway blocked by rock formed when sea level stood 25 feet higher than today. The evidence has been here all along. Let me show you. Now fade between 1958 and today. That deep cut through the ridge, still there after more than a century. The surrounding land still at 33 feet. The canal floor still at 6.4 feet. Over 100 years of growth, but the scar remains. What they carved out of coquina in 1911 hasn't filled back in. The rock they couldn't finish cutting is now a time capsule, preserved in the Enchanted Forest. Watch as we fade between the USGS quad map and the 1958 aerial. You can see the cut they made through the ridge. The land on either side stands at 33 feet elevation. But where the canal punched through, just 6.4 feet, they carved nearly 27 feet deep into solid coquina. This is where the project died. The ridge that blocked the ancient St. Johns River over 100,000 years ago defeated 20th century engineering in the same spot. The rock won, twice. Soil excavation. No problem. But when they hit coquina, even Panama Canal equipment couldn't cut it. The machines that carved through Central America met their match on the Atlantic coastal ridge. Let's look at this in Google Earth with overlays from Peter Adams's 2018 geomorphology research out of the University of Florida. First, the digital elevation model, the St. Johns River Valley, and the subtle topography that controlled drainage for millions of years. Now the MyCCSC region, Merritt Island and Cape Canaveral with their beach ridge patterns. During MIS 5, 130,000 to 80,000 years ago, the ancestral St. Johns River flowed south and emptied right here near Titusville. But by MIS 5E, around 125,000 years ago, the coquina ridge had hardened enough to block that flow. The river reversed well before the Holocene. The sediment the old river had deposited sat there for tens of thousands of years. Then, in the last 6,000 years, waves reworked that sand and pushed it south to build Cape Canaveral. The cape itself is young, but the sand is ancient. Now the modern configuration: Merritt Island, the Indian River Lagoon, and a river flowing north to Jacksonville. I had suspected this ancient connection for years. When Adams published in 2018, I finally had academic authority to back it up. Then I found this: chloride concentration in the upper Floridan aquifer. See that 10,000 milligram contour? Essentially seawater, at a pinhole location, exactly where the ancestral river mouth would have been. A chemical ghost in the aquifer, saltwater intrusion marking a river mouth that closed over 100,000 years ago. The Addison Canal follows that exact path. Ellis and Beckwith were tracing a route written into the rock itself. These dots had never been connected, until now. Ellis and Beckwith carved through the marshland, once a bold scar across the landscape, slowly disappears beneath 6 decades of growth. Subdivisions replace wetlands. Interstate 95 slices through. The agricultural dreams that drove the original project give way to an entirely different kind of development. And yet, hidden in plain sight, history remains. What was once a monument to ambition and failure is now the Enchanted Forest Sanctuary, 470 acres of protected land where visitors can walk the Coquina Trail, cross a bridge over the old canal's remnants, and stand before the very rock that broke a company and preserved a wilderness. Sometimes nature's victories are measured in what doesn't get built. These historical maps tell a remarkable story. Watch as we move through 3 views of the Titusville segment, First the land topography, then the river features, and finally the ridgeline that shaped everything. Notice how complex the landscape becomes west of the Atlantic coastal ridge. The neat barrier island geometry breaks down into a maze of marshes, sloughs, and meandering channels as the terrain tapers toward the St. Johns River Valley. And here's what makes this location so compelling. The Indian River Lagoon and the St. Johns River come within a stone's throw of each other, separated by just a narrow strip of land. You can see why early developers looked at this pinch point and believed a connection wasn't just possible, it was practically inevitable. The two waterways reach for one another like fingers almost touching. Ellis and Beckwith weren't chasing some wild speculation. They were following the land's natural logic, the same logic the ancient St. Johns River followed tens of thousands of years ago when it flowed southward and emptied right here, building what we now call Merritt Island. The geography practically begged for a canal. The economics made sense. The equipment was proven. But standing between intention and execution was 125,000 years of cemented shell, coquina rock, formed when this ridge was an ancient shoreline, now hardened into a barrier that defeated even the heavy machinery fresh from the Panama Canal excavation. Today, modern equipment could blast and cut through that rock in a week. But the permitting environment has changed. Environmental regulations, lagoon protections, wetland restrictions. What 1911 machinery couldn't cut, 21st century bureaucracy is sealed shut forever. That ancient connection will remain closed. Coquina, the same rock that blocked the St. Johns River 85,000 years ago, that the Spanish used to build the impenetrable Castillo de San Marcos in 1672, that defeated Ellis and Beckwith's canal cruise in 1911, is still making headlines today, causing cost overruns for septic-to-sewer conversions on Merritt Island. Some rocks just refuse to be tamed.